This is the first time that we meet the fifth line. The fifth line is the line of universalization. In the tradition of the I Ching, the first line is the foundation of things and how things are, and that the fifth line is always exalted in the tradition because it is what the hopes and the dreams are for that hexagram. In other words, the fifth line always represents the projection of where we want things to be. So, for example, if you look at any of the roll gates, if you take a look at the seventh gate, we've already seen that the first line of the seven is the authoritarian. This is the basis of what a role of leadership is all about. We start off with the boss. But what people would really like to see is the fifth line, and the fifth line is the general. Now, the general is somebody that you only call upon when you need them. That they're not the boss all the time, so you don't have to put up with them. You know, you don't have a cult of personality, you don't have a lifelong dictator. I mean, in North Korea now, they got a dead person who's still their official leader, which I think is really, I think that's hilarious. He was just reelected, he's dead. I mean, I know they're into reincarnation, but I mean, that's a little much, eh? So, the whole thing about the fifth line is that everybody would like a leader when they need one, which is what the fifth line's for, but that leader will go away and not bother them when they no longer need them. So the fifth line is always going to be a projection field. If you go to the 13 one, you have empathy, but if you go to the 13.5, you have the Savior. I mean, we don't just want empathy, we want salvation. So think about what that means if you're going to carry a fifth line as a theme in your life. It means that you are always going to represent the focus of the hopes and dreams of others who have expectations about how valuable you can be for them when they need you. Period. Now that's quite a field. So when you get to the fifth line, you get to the second floor of the house, and like the second line, it's harmony below where everybody can look in and see you naked. The fifth line is above, the curtains are drawn, the lights are turned off, and they're peeking down at the street and watching the parade. And everybody in that parade is looking up there and wondering. You see, there is a mystery to the potential of any fifth line. And that mystery leads to a projection field, whether they are present or not. Now, I'm a fifth line personality. I'm a 5-1 profile. So I get projected on. I've been projected on all my life. This way, that way, whatever way. My personality sun is in the 51.5. The 51st gate is shock, thunder, the arousing. It's projected on me that I can shock you. And if I don't, it hurts my reputation. And the 51st gate is part of the channel of initiation. And if you come to me and spend $350 and I don't initiate you, my reputation goes into the toilet, gets flushed. Everything about being a fifth line person is about being able to establish and maintain your reputation, which means you have to be ready to accept the expectation and know that you can fulfill it. And the theme of that is practicality. Everything about the fifth line is about being practical. That means if it isn't practical, it's never going to work. Never. Because it'll never stand up to the projection field. So when I had this strange encounter that led to all this knowledge, had I only been given the fuzzy stories, the fishy stuff, old tales and cosmologies and the kind of stuff you hear people channel all the time, I never could have gone out into the world with my profile and met anything but suspicion. Nothing but suspicion. Because the projection is, if I don't deliver something practical, they're going to think that I'm just pulling their leg. They're going to think that I'm just trying to, fool them. But I was given practical knowledge, fortunately for me, fortunately for all of us. That practical knowledge allowed me to put up with the projection field. And because I could present something to someone that was practical, had practical value, then I could live up to the expectation. So think about what it is to be that fifth line. What that really means is you better know your stuff. That's the first thing. Remember, it's harmony, the second line, We always want to educate them. The fifth line knows that. Fifth line is transpersonal. It is the most transpersonal of all the lines. As a matter of fact, it's the only one that's really purely transpersonal. It carries karma. It needs to be able to universalize to the other to pay off whatever it's got to pay off. And if it does it practically, then it can have success in its life. So practicality becomes a theme. So when we move from the 2-4, we have the hermit opportunist. Now we move to the hermit heretic. Oh, this is something different. This is the guy that wakes up and decides that if you drill a hole in your forehead, you can open up your third eye. I knew a guy like that. And there were actually people who let him do that. Can you imagine? Some weird Dutch guy thought it was going to relieve everybody's, neocortex pressure. I mean, think about the nature of the hermit heretic. We have already seen that the hermit opportunist is only going to come out when it is called, and it's only going to come out when that call is really sufficient to be able to turn it on, that it's ready to leave its leave me alone and get involved. But the moment that you come to the hermit heretic, you come to somebody who is deeply, deeply reclusive. You see, the fifth line does not function well when it's present all the time. With fifth lines, familiarity breeds contempt. It's very important for fifth lines to take their distance. In taking their distance, it's how their power grows. This is the theme of the general. And it's a good theme to look at. In ancient Athens, in their so-called democracy, they would get into trouble and they would hire a dictator. This is the general. And they go to the general and say, look, you got to save us. You're the only one that's going to be able to do this. So the general takes the job. The general wins the war. They all celebrate the general. They give him a nice parade. They give him all kinds of booty, blah, blah, blah. And then he's expected to step down. So he steps down and he goes to his farm in the countryside. Now he thinks it's over. But you see, on a day-to-day basis, anytime anything goes wrong in that society, what those people are thinking about is, maybe the general can fix this. And the people that are in power, who brought the general in to save them, now feel very uncomfortable that the general is sitting there in the countryside. And the power of the general grows. Don't you have that? You have this in America with what's his name? Colin Powell. The more he said no, the more everybody thought that he was going to be able to solve the problems. This is classic of the fifth line. Now, of course, the whole thing is that when you're a fifth line and you have your practical solution, you can wait for the timing. You can wait for the pressure to build and then go out there, do your universalizing, and be very successful. But if it's not practical and you can't get it across, then you have to suffer the fate that all heretics suffer. They get burnt at the stake. Well, they do. So the moment that you're looking at a 2-5, what you're looking at is somebody who says, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. If I have anything practical, maybe I will come out. But I know that if I come out, I'm never going to be rid of you again. That projection field is going to stay for life. It's always going to be there. You're going to be elected president after you're dead. You can still come and save the country and its problems. The projected attitude, we've seen that the second line Democrat says, I'm willing to let other people take responsibility. Period. When you come to it's unconscious in the 2-4, we had the abdicator. The classic, no, I don't want to be involved. I don't care. I'll step back. It's okay. And here you come to the general that's underneath that Democrat. In other words, what you're looking at is a very, very powerful potential to move from, yes, it's all very nice, this democracy, I'll watch all of that work, you can all vote. But when you really get into trouble, I'm the one that can really help. They know that. They know that because it's always being projected on them on the unconscious level. Think about what that's like to be a 2-5. I'm a 5-1. I have the fifth line as my personality. It's different. I can have contact with that. But if you're a 2-5 or you're a 3-5, then you have to see that that projection field that's coming onto you is actually coming onto your unconscious. And your personality may not be getting that message. Because there's all kinds of people that are projecting on you. You're the one that can help me. You're the one that can solve my problem. You're the one that I'm going to count on. Now, you know, the fifth line has all of these very sweet and very glorious names to it. You know, saint and savior and all this stuff. But after all, it's tough to fulfill the expectation and the projection of those that are looking at you. And that fifth lines would rather hide than make that attempt to come out, because the moment that they come out, if they cannot bring what is practical, they end up in trouble. They just end up in trouble. And then they rather go into their, you know, their private world and live out their private heresy. The limited perspective, we've already seen the bigotry, that is, being open and being unable to control your openness to the other. In other words, having people being forced upon you, keep on coming into your life. Whereas in the 2-4, which is the main theme here, that automatically is going to bring fatigue. But look how profoundly different it is when you get to this changing cross, because the theme underneath is the Savior. So look, you know, what you really have is that these are people that they don't want to have anything to do with you, but they can actually help you. And of course, how do we describe these people? Their bark is worse than their bite. I mean, you have to understand about 2-5s that you got to get past their bark, that they don't want to have anything to do with you, because in fact they can be very, very, very helpful. You know, they can come up with practical solutions for you. They can, in fact, live out that role of being a savior. But because it's unconscious, their personality dominates and keeps on keeping you away. And those people that get to know them, they will always tell the other, don't pay attention. You know, that's just their bark. You know, you get underneath that. Remember the second line. You always have to penetrate the second line. If you don't penetrate it, you don't get any of the rewards. Now, when I first started in design and people were looking at these lines and they get to the 59-2, and I would meet these women who were 59-2s, and I could see their suspicion. And I say women because most of my early people that came were women. And I used to say, it's not about your sexuality. It's about how you get to your sexuality. You know, again, this second line theme is always demanding that you have to be penetrated. And when you're penetrated, then everything opens up. That's the beauty of this. So if you really penetrate the 2-5, if you really get to them, they deeply would like to be left alone. I mean, deeply. Their harmony as a profile, the 5-2, and we'll see that tomorrow, the 5-2 is the only profile that's self-motivated and can't be motivated in any other way. The 2-5 really, you know, if you don't make an effort, you can't get their magic. And they really have magic underneath. I mean, they can be, particularly at the unconscious level, because at the unconscious level it's so pure. I mean, it's innocent. It's one of those things to see about the beauty of your unconscious. It may be uncomfortable when you first have to deal with what it is, to grow up with so much of what you are just coming out and not knowing how that works. But to really recognize that all of these unconscious aspects in you, they're really innocent aspects. The fact that we have personality contact to the personality data means, according to the laws of quantum, we're affecting it. In other words, there's an interplay between our consciousness and those gates because we are aware of it. Yet at the same time, when you go to the unconscious, that doesn't exist. There's just this innocence that comes out. So these are innocent saviors. They're innocent generals. What they don't understand is that when they turn people away, they're in a no-win situation. And that's the most difficult part of being a 2-5. You see, because there's such a strong projection field, they have both lines that are about projection. When they send somebody away, that person wants to get access to them even more. They keep on projecting that they're sending them away because they're really holding back and that they can get what they need from those people. And so they're under enormous pressure in their life. A lot of 2-5s just run away a lot, you know, just to escape, you know, just to get away from the pressure of the expectation field that's on them. And remember something about the second line personality. The second line personality is really rather humble. And its humility is based on the fact that it doesn't really know why it can do what it does, even if it does something brilliantly. There's this sense of humility in not being the master of it. Not like a first line that really gets there and gets to master it. So that second line personality, when you're dealing with it and you're projecting on its unconscious fifth line that it can be your savior, that it can be your general, it really doubts itself. Part of that pushing away of the second line is saying, yeah, but I don't know if I can do that. Force me. You know? I'm coming to get you. I'm hiding. I'm coming to get you. I'm hiding. I'm leaving. I'm in the bushes. You know, you have to keep on in order to get to that point where that's going to jump out. And then you get the benefit from it. And you can see what happens to all second line people. You can see why they have bigotry as a personality theme. They're sick and tired of people knocking on them, banging on them, trying to penetrate them, trying to get them to be something. You know, they really get tired of that. And yet, of course, they need it, after all. You know, it's part of why we're all in this together. It's not like you can avoid all of that. But if you understand it, you have a 2-5 child. You know, that 2-5 child needs to have the respect for its need to be left alone. Its need to be left alone. You know, I mean, if you have a family life and you have a child that doesn't want to integrate with the rest of the children, you think you've got a problem. 2-5 children can end up with, you know, being dumped into therapeutic machinery simply because, you know, they're not interested in integrating. They learn right away that people project on them. You know, that they're expected to run faster or help their friend in time of need or whatever the case may be. They learn all these things right away that the other is projecting on them, and they learn that they're much happier being left alone. You know, so they don't have to take on that responsibility because they're very, very sensitive. You know, whenever you're dealing with fifth lines, you're dealing with people that are going to talk behind your back. As a matter of fact, they'll talk behind your front. Huh? Whatever that means. The aspired to role of the second lines, as we have seen, is harmony. This is a personality that's seeking harmony, and we saw the joke in the 2-4 that the hermit opportunist finds harmony in being alone. This is where they really have their greatest joy. However, you know, the 2-5 has a real difficult problem. By the way, are there any 2-5s here? Yeah, one. Okay. You know, there's not a lot of them. The 2-5 is always going to have a dilemma because instead of finding harmony through aloneness, they find harmony through being attractive. You know, imagine what that's like. You've got a personality that says, leave me alone, and you have an unconscious that says, come and get me. And then the personality says, leave me alone, and the unconscious says, come and get me. You know, so they pull other people to them in a very strange way. They just do. You know, it's part of their projection field that they are automatically an attractive force to others. So their harmony comes out of being left alone but knowing that they're attractive. Now that's important. You see, when the general goes to the farm after he's saved the country, he wants to know that every day there are people who are thanking their lucky stars that he was there for them. I mean, he doesn't need to see them in person. He doesn't need the massage. He doesn't need any of that, just so he knows that that is out there and that is operating out there. That's the power of the fifth line. So the 2-5 needs to have the attention. It has to. It's a fifth line. It's there to universalize. And yet at the same time, it has this deep dilemma with its personality. You can understand that that creates difficulties. You know, what that really means is that there is a deep reticence to involve and yet a deep pressure to get involved. And not simply to get involved, but to always be the one that can be helpful, useful, whatever. The secret always goes back to the practicality. As long as the fifth line knows and lives by what is practical, they're going to be healthy. And it is practical for a 2-5 child to be left alone. They don't have to go out on a family outing. They don't have to participate in things that they're not interested in participating in. It's okay. And yet at the same time, everybody wants to attract them to that. And only when you understand that can you really leave them. We would love to have you, but we're going. That's all they need to hear. That's great. They would love to have me, but I don't have to go. And that's glory for a 2-5. Right? The bonding strategy. We have already seen that the second line theme, the strategy is shyness, and shyness demands boldness. That's the only way in which you're going to have the right kind of genetic pairing or genetic bonding. And when we were looking at the 2-4, we were looking at the need to be penetrated in order to become friends. In other words, the fourth line theme of the confidant or not, the necessity to develop or have friendship before that can lead to intimacy. So that the hermit opportunist is waiting for somebody that will penetrate them and become their friend. That's their theme. But when you come to the 2-5, you come to something totally different. Yes, that second line is saying, I'm shy, you got to break down my barriers. But the fifth line underneath is the line of seduction. These are the great seducers. This is the way that it works. This is the snake in the garden. This is the ultimate seduction. All fifth lines seduce you into thinking that they're your savior, that they're your saint, that they're your general. And of course, people fall for that all the time. So think about what that's like for a 2-5. That 2-5 is saying, leave me alone, you have to penetrate me. And at the same time saying, aren't I sexy? Wouldn't you like to? Don't you think that would be fun? Eh? Do you have what it takes to do that? Come on and try. I'm sitting here quiet. That's the whole thing about the 2-5 strategy. When you understand your purpose, it's his purpose. And it is your genetics after all. If you honor that, you'll see it really works. I mean, it really works. The 2-5 doesn't have to do anything other than be in somebody's aura, to get them to open up the door. That's all. They just have to be there. That's the way their process unfolds. But of course, if you don't know that about yourself, the fact that your personality, remember that's what you got conscious access to, your personality is pushing away and your unconscious is going like this. If you don't understand that, you get really upset about the pressure that's being put on you. And this, of course, is the whole thing about the 2-5s. They cannot stand the pressure well. The 2-4 can. It's really good at that because it keeps on filtering for its opportunity. But the 2-5 does not like that endless pressure on itself. So dealing with this kind of a profile, this is a much more withdrawn life. Not only do you have a personality that wants to be a hermit, but remember, part of the strategy of the fifth line is that you cannot be present all the time. Your reputation grows when you're away. And then you come back with something practical and it can grow again. So you really have people who are basically very withdrawn. Now remember, because they carry that fifth line as a possibility underneath, they can be enormous forces. All these second line personalities, these two second line profiles, never underestimate them. They have powerful transpersonal unconsciouses. They have a deep capacity, once they've been motivated, once they've got their engines going, to have real impact in the community at large. Security. The second lines are all about nourishment and depletion. And remember, we talked about how the second line in wanting to be left alone often takes its time in looking after itself and has this expectation that other people are going to look after it in that sense. And of course, with the 2-4, the opportunity can come and then they can move very quickly into the ability to be able to be nourishers themselves, to be able to be benefactors for others. But this unconscious shift of the fourth line benefactor dependent to the distributor hoarder, this is very different. The fifth line theme of distribution or hoarding. The fifth line is always being projected on. So if you go to the fifth line general and you say, General, will you help me? And the general says no, their reputation is then going to be that they're a hoarder, that they're selfish, that they don't care. It doesn't matter whether their reason is legitimate or not. It doesn't matter whether the general realizes that in that situation they have no practical solution and it will fail. It does not matter. There's no way out for them. They have to deal with the impact on their projected field. Remember, we always expect fifth lines to fulfill what we think is possible. And so it's very easy for us to be disappointed with what actually happens in our connection with them. So here you're dealing with the hoarder on one side or the distributor on the other side. So the moment that the fifth line is universalizing, that's the moment that everybody thinks that they're wonderful. They're distributing, they're putting everything out. And of course, if what they distribute isn't practical, even though everybody's pleased at first that they're distributing, they're going to have a terrible blow to their reputation afterwards, because if they didn't distribute what was practical, everybody's going to talk about them, and it's going to talk about them in a bad way. So the 2-5 living in a deep, deep projection field, you know, damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's why they're very careful. The 2-5 child has to learn that, has to learn to understand that they have to be careful about what they get involved with, and that only when they are well-grounded and well-educated in something are they going to have the stability to be able to handle the projection field. Otherwise, they won't. And again, all fifth lines, when they really go bad, they get burnt at the stake. I mean, they really have to pay a price for that because they are heretics and they're dangerous. We don't want our saints to turn into devils. We don't like it. We get really upset. And so they're under that pressure.